you and I are going to chat about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's not a crazy appealing team. It's cool that we do have some Steelers fans, it looks like, in the chat, which is great. Andrew Ford says he doesn't believe Tomlin has had a losing season as a head coach in Pittsburgh. He has his hands full this season. You are correct. I was looking at this last night, Brian, I'm like, man, the Steelers are always hanging around. They really are. You have to go all the way back to 2003 to see their last losing season. They were 6-10. It was under Cowher that season. And then Tomlin came in 2007. Now, they've had some seasons where they've been 8-8. 2019, they were 8-8. 2013, 2012, they were 8-8. 2006, they're 8-8. But man, Tomlin has done a really great job with his team over the years. The defense has always been strong, but now this is the first year without Big Ben on this squad. And that's the question that everybody has, Brian, is the quarterback play. Gators are looking for one. Steelers are looking for one. There's some reports that it will be Mason Rudolph. I guess out of all the guys that are there on this roster, he's probably the one that knows the offense the best, having started games over the past couple of years with the Steelers. But Tyler, if you want to bring up the board of just like, who do we have on this board? Is it Mitch Trubisky? I think we have on this board, but they did bring in Trubisky. I did put Kenny Pickett in there as well. At the time of making this board, I did not believe that Mason Rudolph would be the guy. I don't know if you believe Matt Canada or not, but I'll ask you a couple questions. Who do you think it will be, and who do you think it should be under center week 1?
Yeah, so who I think it will be and who I think it should be as of now is Mitch Trubisky. I'm sorry. And the reason why, and don't get me wrong, I think Mason Rudolph, if anybody else could be that guy, I think Mason Rudolph would be that guy. After his first season, which was a little bit up and down, he came in when he had to in his second year, and he did well. Like, he didn't do terrible, right? He was able to show that he could run the offense and be somewhat effective. So you would think that he could build a little bit on that. Now, by no means do I think he is like a starter or an above average quarterback, but for what they have, I think he could do it. But Mitch Trubisky brings a really interesting dynamic to everything because you want to hold him accountable to his Chicago years. And he had some rough ones, right? But also they had a lot of things going on within the organization, within the coaching staff, that some people want to point the finger to that. So for me, I think that Mitch Trubisky, when he was effective, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And he could get it done in multiple ways, whether it was on the ground or through the air. So I think that for what they need and having that year behind Josh Allen and seeing what it feels like to really be a part of a winning organization and then come into a Steelers team with a Mike Tomlin who engraves that type of mentality into his players, I think that Mitch Trubisky could get the job done. And they're always going to hang around because they have, a top 5 to top 7 defense every single year. So really they're just looking for a guy that, hey, don't mess it up. Okay. And make plays that need to be made. So, yeah,
I agree. I think that's a great point, what you made about him being in Buffalo last year with Brian Dable and, behind Josh Allen, and probably definitely learning a thing or two, from those two guys. And man, you're right. What a mess Chicago has been for years. And now they finally see you later to the GM and Matt Nagy. And they got some issues still over there, but at least that they kind of clean slate, in Chicago and start fresh over there. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be Trubisky. I've always thought it was going to be Trubisky as the starter. I was surprised to hear about Matt Canada saying Mason Rudolph, but maybe he's kind of trying to light a fire under certain guys. But, you're evaluating players. This is things that you're going to be doing quite often here, in the NFL and in your future, it looks like. And with us over at FTN Data, Kenny Pickett, what do you see from him overall? We may see him this season if things go sour for the Steelers. Especially if Trubisky or Rudolph, can't get it done, or, they're behind, significantly in the division. The Ravens are at least coming in this year healthy, which they didn't last year. We'll see what happens at the quarterback position with Cleveland. I don't know if there was a team that was as unlucky as Baltimore last year with all those injuries that happened before even week 1. It was crazy. And then we know what, the leap forward that the Bengals had. What do you see in Kenny Pickett? Do you think we'll see him under center this year? And do you think he could be, a starter in the NFL?
Yeah. So for Kenny Pickett, and I've gotten to watch a little bit of his tape. To me, Kenny Pickett is Yeah, he could be a starter in this league. I think, it's one of those things you can't really tell until he gets there, right, and does it. He was great at Pitt. The thing that kind of turned me off from him and probably turned a lot of NFL teams off from the quarterbacks of this year was just the simple fact that he always struggled to stand in the pocket and make the next best throw. Watching some of his tape, I got to see him come off his first or second read. And, when you watch the film, you see, hey, when you come off that first read, maybe that, backside dig or that second or third option is there. And a lot of the times what he would do is instead break the pocket and try to improvise and create, which is great. Like, that's an awesome thing to be able to do. And he's definitely got the athleticism to do it, which will probably keep him around in this league. But with that being said, the NFL routinely takes away that first read. So A lot of the times the great quarterbacks are improvising from the pocket. They know where to go next with the ball. And that's kind of like my bigger concern with him. Because he's never really showcased that he can consistently do it on the college level. With that being said, better coaching, better opportunity, better players, you never really know, right? You throw him into the fire and see what he can do. So, I think he's got a chance.
I think so too. Yeah, he probably – I think he was my favorite quarterback early, in the class. Mm-hmm. I know it wasn't the strongest, but I think he does have, Will's got a high ceiling too, I believe. But I think that he has a high ceiling. Hopefully, Mark, we answered that question. He was asking about, thoughts on Trubisky. He said he hasn't gotten it done, but he was also playing for the Bears. And that has been bad news for a while now. So I think we I think we're all in agreement with that as well. Here's Andrew checks in. You know what you're going to get with Trubisky if he struggles in the first 2 to 4 games. Give the ball to small hands Pickett, what people are saying, and then we see what he can do. Everyone always, I feel, Andrew, I know you're tongue in cheek there and you're a Steelers fan, but people look at the hands thing for quarterbacks. I think it's overvalued. Would you agree? It's a little bit.
I think there's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things from the combine and stuff that are very much overvalued. You could say, I'm sure there's other quarterbacks in the league that have had small hands that have been able to get it done. But I guess the blaring example would be Paxton Lynch. You see where he's at now. He had tiny hands. That was his concern. And he's, I think he's like in one of the I won't say minor leagues of football, but like he's in one of the other leagues that aren't the NFL, right? Professional football. So,
No, we love it, Andrew. We're just kind of joking with you on that comment. But DK Metcalf couldn't run around pylons. Remember, oh my goodness, what is the score that he had at the combine? And then he fell down draft boards, and he's an absolute monster, and he's just he's a freak. Gotta ask you about Najee Harris. So Najee Harris had a big season last year. As you see, he's going roughly as the 4th running back off the board in fantasy drafts. He led everybody in touches last year. He finished as RB3 in a PPR setting. Man, did he ever get a workload, dude. 307 carries. He had 1,200 rushing yards, 3.9 yards per carry. Found the end zone 7 times on the ground, 3 more times through the air. He had 94 targets, people. 94 targets, which was tied with Austin Eckler, but he did lead all running backs with 74 grabs. There's been some rumblings out of camp that they want to scale back just a little bit, and I'm sure they will, Brian, to an extent. Let's be honest, there's not a lot of guys inside that running back room that I think, could really threaten, stealing goal line work from him. And he's such a great pass catcher that I don't think he's going to come off the field too much as a third down guy. But it does seem like, what are we projecting for him? Another season with 300 carries?
I think that if the Steelers have their way, it won't be 300. I think you're going to see some high volume from him. But I think that, and one thing about the AFC North, man, they're going to run the ball. It's going to be a run-happy team somewhere in there. The Bengals might be slightly the only exception, right? But with that being said, I think that, Najee Harris, he's going to get some carries. And, it's going to be kind of the same approach that you see teams like Cleveland doing and trying to help these younger quarterbacks or these quarterbacks that may be struggling with better ground game and, more creative ground schemes and things like that. And when you got a guy like Najee Harris that you can give 300 carries to and get production out of, you're going to lean on him, right? So with Mitch Trubisky there, I think they'll probably scale back a little bit. But with that being said, you can expect him to get quite a bit of carries and quite a bit of touches.
Yeah, I think he's going to be top 5 again in terms of touches. We'll stop the Steelers talk with the wideouts. Let's throw up the board one more time, Tyler, and just you still got Diontae Johnson dealing with a little bit of a hip flexor. Chase Claypool, I believe, is dealing with something as well. George Pickens is a wide receiver I really, really like. I'm just unsure about the quarterback play, right? And Pat Freiermuth, who had a really decent season last year, especially down the stretch. Is there a wide receiver out of the 3 that you like? Is it Diontae? Do you feel like Claypool has a little bit something more to offer?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because last year I would routinely tell people that, hey, Pittsburgh, don't sleep on their receivers. I think they could arguably have one of the best receiver groups in the NFL. Obviously, there have been some changes, but I think the addition of George Pickens really, really helps. I think people are going to see that. I think he's having a really good camp. And I think that after watching some of his tape too, like his ability to play physical, which is something that they really haven't had since like Hines Ward, really. So his ability to play physical, go up and make plays, and also, he's a very good athlete. He's tough. He's gonna move around. He's smart. He's tough. He's gonna move around, make plays, block when he needs to, and he's gonna be reliable. And I think that's one thing that the Steelers really haven't had the last couple years. They've been plagued by a lot of drops. I mean, Diontae Johnson, when he catches the ball, I mean, I'm doing my receiver rankings now. I mean, he's a top 20 receiver. Like, he's one of the best in the league. So when he can catch, he's great, but we don't know if he's going to catch the ball every time. And I think that's something that'll be rectified. But I would like to say that George Pickens is probably one of my favorite guys. And he was one of my favorite guys coming out this year. So
yeah, I really like him too, and he's underrated. He's getting slept on in drafts, I think, because of the quarterback play, right? I think that's it. But man, if Johnson's not ready to go week 1 or Chase Claypool, right? I mean, you're going to have this rookie all of a sudden like potential like to lead, right? Maybe in targets and things like that. I don't think ultimately at the end of the year he's going to be in the leader in targets, but Diontae Johnson, 169 targets last year, is the 3rd most at the wide receiver position. So Ben really, really peppered him, and he's going to be a focal point of the offense. You're right. He is a really, really good wide receiver. He did struggle with drops a couple years ago, but man, when that ball is in his hands, look out, right? He is very explosive. And Mark Carr says, I've seen to have picked up Claypool in most of my dynasty leagues for decent, something cheap. So hopefully he can show something. I think now's the time, right? He's coming off a bit of a down season. There's some uncertainty at the quarterback position. If you're in a dynasty league, maybe the time to add him.
I will say, too, I actually pulled up some data on Chase Claypool, and he led the league in targets on go routes. So he had, I want to say, like maybe 40 or so go route targets. And, I mean, he was by far, like, middle to lower in the yards produced off of that. I think he only had maybe like 300 yards. And then the next guy who was behind him, I want to say it was Jamar Chase. He had like double the yards off of less targets. So it's one of those things, like we're waiting for Claypool to get and grow into that deep threat player. But he struggles in yards through catches with contact and contact point catches. It's one of those things that he's going to have to get better at, and he's got the size, the ability. He's just going to have to be able to just go out there and do it. And I think that's what they're looking for.
And I love the confidence he has when he says he's top 3 wide receiver in the game. Yeah. I know he wasn't just talking about on his team. He was talking about overall in the NFL. They use him in different ways, right? Some end arounds. I think he had like a 4 touchdown game, and I think like every touchdown came in like a different way. And some of that was some of that's on him. I agree. He needs to get better in that aspect of the game, but also the quarterback play, right? Like get him the ball. Big Ben just didn't have that arm to get the ball to him down the field. So maybe we'll see Trubisky or anybody else in that offense be able to do it for him.